You're now listening to Smart People You Meet at Parties, a podcast from Entrepreneur First, the world's leading talent investor. My name is Bernadette. I'm the General Manager of Entrepreneur First Singapore, and I'm privileged to speak with some of the sharpest minds in Southeast Asia's startup ecosystem. This podcast gives you a behind-the-scenes listen into the everyday conversations we have at EF with founders, investors, and thought leaders in deep tech. For today's episode, we're joined by Michael Blakey. Michael is the managing partner and co-founder of Singapore-based venture capital firm Cocoon Capital. Set up alongside Will Klipkin in 2016, Cocoon adopts a hands-on, founder-first approach to early-stage investing. Michael takes us inside the mind of an investor, shares invaluable tips on how founders can nail their first impression, the importance of doing due diligence on VCs, and how Cocoon supports early-stage founders to grow into CTOs and CEOs. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Welcome to our fourth episode of Spy Maps, Smart People You Meet at Parties. Today I am joined by Michael Blakey, who runs Cocoon here, a venture capital firm in Singapore. I'd love, Michael, for you to introduce yourself.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, my name is Michael Blakey. I've been an early stage investor now since the beginning of 2000. It's my full-time job. So hit my 20-year anniversary and I'm still standing, which is always nice. I mostly invest over the years into deep tech and enterprise tech companies at pre-revenue or early stage revenue stage, and then invest all the way through to exit. So my first investment I made at the back in the days was into a robotics company, which it took me 17 years, but I finally exited to GE. So this is something that I've been very much focused on during the time. So Cocoon was set up. We raised our second fund last year of $30 million. And again, we're what you would term active investors. So we invest only into 6 deals a year as a maximum. And we spend a lot of our time supporting the development of those businesses, not in the day-to-day so much, but more in terms of helping turn founders into CEOs and CTOs, helping on the BD side, because a lot of the founders that we meet are more tech focused than commercial side of it. So we help them build, on that. And I also hold the claim to fame. I was the first person to invest in EF in the UK. So I go back a long time with EF. And over the years, I've invested in 5 companies directly in EF, as well as being a backer of their first fund. So that's very much my background, yeah.
Yeah, we're very grateful to have Michael as a long-term friend of EF. Michael, actually, I just want to pull on one of those threads. So you mentioned turning founders into CEOs and CTOs. In your mind, what's the difference there?
Well, founders are the people who've come up with the ideas. Normally they're on the tech and, they've got the company started. But if you actually, that's only just a small part of the overall journey. To build a successful company, you've got to build a strategy, you've got to build a team, you've got to be able to raise funds. And just because you're the founder doesn't mean that you're going to be successful at being a CEO and building a team, potentially covering, managing hundreds of people across all over the world. And the thing is that every individual is different. So how I would manage and build a company would be very different than you. And a lot of the people that are setting up businesses, I said, more on the tech side or on the younger, they haven't actually even had management experience. Or if they've had management, it's more like middle management, in terms of building forecasts, build strategies, just understanding how to actually develop the culture of a company. It sounds already easy, but it's very, very difficult, especially if you don't have an experience doing it. So my partner and myself, we've done this numerous times and also been successful founders ourselves. So we help kind of on a one-to-one basis, each founder develop and to become the best leader that they can in the style that makes them feel most comfortable. I don't believe there's only one. There's definitely ways you can't do it. There's not only one way that you can do it. So we feel that it's really important to get that right, but also help founders understand if they even want to be CEOs or CTOs. It's one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about. But sometimes, actually, I was just talking to a founder earlier who really was like, I'm the tech guy. I don't want to be. I know I'm the founder, but I don't want to be the CEO. I'm in the role because I can't afford to get the right person. I can't find the right person. But he understands that actually the biggest risk to the company long term is actually if he actually stays in that role because he's not best suited for it. And that's really not what he wants to do. So it's figuring out also what is the role that you need to be when the company is growing. So I think there's that misconception sometimes the founder has to be the CEO. At the beginning, yes. But moving forward, it's always not maybe the right fit. So we have these difficult conversations early to figure out what the founder wants. And then my job is, if they want to be the CEO, I've got to help them understand and be able to become that best CEO possible.
Michael, I'm curious. There's a lot of literature out there that VCs have really sold founders the dream that they can be the CEO kind of in perpetuity, and that kind of came out of Silicon Valley. Have you ever confronted a situation where the founder wanted to be the CEO but clearly lacked the skills to do so? And what do you do as a VC yourself during that time?
I definitely. And I've actually had that conversation, I think, because I'm much more, as we're active investors, I think I come across that, and Will, my partner, comes across that in a lot more often than you would normally with a traditional VC, which is, I would say, invest in more companies and not so hands-on. I think but also is the reason why we've had such a success rate with our portfolio companies. So I think combined, we're about 60% success rate, and most of the investments we're making at like pre-seed or pre-revenue or early stage revenue companies. My approach is I'm always very honest. Even when we're making the investment, I will sit down and actually talk to the founder straight up, and I say, look, right now you're not. This is what you need to become, and this is what you need. And my job is to get you there. But it might come to a point where either you don't have, I can't take you to that level, or you get to a point where you suddenly realize that actually as a founder, you don't want to be in that position. Managing people, especially I find on the tech side, a lot of people are very comfortable with the tech and building the products. They don't like having to deal with all of the people issues or having to deal with all the financials. And it's something which they're like, okay, if this is part of being that CEO position, actually I'm more comfortable maybe in, CPO or, other positions. So, and we have lost a few deals because we've been too, I wouldn't say too honest, we've just been honest and saying, our concern is that you might not be the right person. But I think I prefer to have that discussion before we make an investment or, when we're making the investment, because, the reason that I've supported EF and the reason I think I've had the success that I've had is I invest in people. And it's the quality of the people and what I believe they can grow into. I'm not expecting everybody to be the cream of the crop, right, or have all the experience at the beginning. Because a lot of the time, a lot of the founders we're investing in are, 25, 30, maybe 35 years old. They won't have had a huge amount of experience. But I want to believe they have the talent and the want, but also that if they are lacking, that they can bring in people better themselves. You hear a lot, A-star founders will hire A+ management. B-grade founders will hire C-grade, senior management. So for us, it's not, I always want to say, even myself, I want to be the dumbest person around the table when I'm doing the deal. If I feel like I know more about the business than the founders, then they're arguing on cloud cuckoo land, or the founders just aren't good enough. And it can be the first one, I must admit. But but so on that side of it, and I agree with you. A lot of founders, a lot of VCs will tell you whatever you want to hear. And I think that's one of the things that you've got to be if you're raising funds, and especially if you're a hot deal. So there's lots of people going chasing you, they will tell you, and that's it, we will tell you whatever we feel you want to hear, to get you on board. We'll promise we'll open all these doors, we can do all of that, but very rarely do they deliver, because you just got to think you're one of 20, 30, 40 deals they could be doing that year. But there's an easy way, and I'm amazed still that more founders don't do that. You've got to do your due diligence. So you've got to go and talk, even before sometimes you actually go and talk to the funds themselves. Go and reach out. You can always tell which companies those funds have invested in. Reach out to the founders. Ask them, hey, company, Cocoon invested in you. And they talk a lot online about how they're active and they support, and they support you. They don't try and run the business. Is that true? Can you give me an example? And it's also, you've also got to be careful about the way you ask the questions. It's not, are they good investors? Say, can you give me an example of when things went badly? How did they help you? Did they throw the toys out the pram? Did they start pointing fingers? Or did they actually roll up their sleeves and be helpful? And I think for me, those are the questions. So it's really important that you understand what the founders, what the VCs are like, and do your due diligence on them, and don't take what they say for granted. Because to be quite honest, we all know what it would take for you to accept a deal from us. But it's a relationship, so you've got to feel comfortable with that person, because you're potentially at the stage that you're investing in now. On average, it's 8 to 10 years before you have an exit.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the person or you don't trust them, it's a bad relationship, which is really hard to get out of. So for me, yeah, exactly. So you've got to make sure that, and I think too many founders look at just the basic terms of the deal, like what is the best valuation, how much money are they offering me, and it's about the intangibles, in terms of the trust, the value they bring, as well as the money. And these are things that you've got to kind of look into and figure out what you need from an investor. Like, some people will think, I just need money, I don't need anything. Others might, I need people help me on the BD side, I need people that can open doors for me or have the right connections. So you've got to look at it, what is best for you, what you're looking out of it yourself.
Michael, this isn't a question to enable future EF cohorts or listeners to game the Cocoon process, but what are the yellow flags you see when you meet founders? So when you talked a lot about investing in the people. What gives you pause, or either experiences or attributes that make you think maybe not?
Okay, I can give you actually a very real example with an EF company now that's driving me bonkers.
Great. This is yet another unscripted moment.
Okay. Literally for me, we invest in people. We're literally meeting you for the first time, and at the end of it, we're making a decision. Are we going to invest in you or not? Because most times people make that investment decision in their head in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the first meeting. If you get past that, then it's like, is our judgment right? Is our gut reaction right? But we're making it on a very snap decision. There's very little data points. We talk about doing due diligence, but it's just getting comfortable with the founders. So for me, one of the things I find as a yellow flag is that, how prepared are you and how open to communication are you with the investor? So if I have a meeting with you and I say, oh, can you send me your forecasts for the next 18 months so I can see if how much money you raise and how you've come to that number. And then you then don't hear back from them for like a week and a half. And then they come back to say, oh, can you give us another week whilst we pull it all together? For me, I'm kind of like, well, how did you even come up with that number? And also, you've taken a week and a half to come back to me. If this is, I look at how you approach me, how you handle it, you would actually then do it to a potential sales company. So if you are, I don't get that many data points. So every little interaction that you have with me as an investor tells me something about how you would go around doing sales. So it's that first email. is it, does it come across as a spam email, or have you personalized it?
Yeah.
I've literally had, sending me a lovely email, but starting it as dear sir. I'm just like, well, the best one I had is like somebody had asking me for $1 million, and they said, "Hey, dude." I was like, okay,
these are great stories,
maybe,
Michael.
it's maybe not quite that, it doesn't give that professionalism. If this is how you would approach a person, somebody you're trying to sell to. It's probably not the best way. How you follow up with a meeting, I say, even if the meeting hasn't gone well, it's very hard to tell sometimes when you're pitching if it's gone well or not. You have assumptions, but do a follow-up email within 24 hours. Say, this really great talking to you. You've raised X, Y, and point. Answer any points that you don't think you got across well. And if there's action points from that meeting saying, just confirming, these are the action points, or these are the action points I put the information in, or I might need a little bit more time. But recognize it. It makes you come across as a lot more professional. Also, be prepared. So have your deck ready. I've had people come and say, which deck do you want to see? I've got different decks I can show you. And I'm like, okay, this is really concerning. You should only have, like, when you're pitching, only one deck. But I think also the old adage of always know who you're selling to is the most important thing. So one of the big mistakes that founders make when they're pitching to investors is they think I'm a customer. I'm not a customer. Why I want to actually talk to you is like, I want to figure out how I'm going to make money. So what the information that you share with your customer is very different than what you would share with your investor. So you've got to be able to clearly define, what the difference is and what makes investors tick versus what makes customers. So quite often I receive pitches, and it is literally a sales deck to a customer, which all they talk about is their product. And whilst it's wonderful, your product, and it's your baby, so it's really important. As an investor, it's not actually in my top 3 or 4 things that I actually really care about to make an investment decision. So for me, those are some of the things that you've got to be aware of as like yellow flags on that side of it. Green flags are you've come, you're prepared. Also, that you always have an ask. So I would say this across the board. Doesn't mean if you're an investor or a sales opportunity. If you're at the end of it, or you start off saying, "Oh, I know you've invested X and Y. I've already talked to them, or I'm a similar, or I've got a question, what did you learn from that? Or can you make an introduction to that company?" It shows that you've done prep work before turning up to that meeting. That you've actually put some thought in it. You've personalized it, which makes the game more professional. I would never turn up to a meeting with a potential, for me, my customers are my LPs, with an LP, not having done some research on that person. Absolutely. And not having an ask outside of money. So they might have invested in X company, which would be relevant to one of my portfolio. I would always say, look, even if you don't invest, I would really appreciate if you can introduce me to the founder of X. And it's amazing, even on that side, that, okay, this is just not a pitch that you've done to every, 50 other people. And we're just like, we all want to feel that little bit of love and like personalization, and that you actually really want us. We're not just another face across the table from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of this, Michael, when you hear it, I guess sounds like common sense, but maybe not so common. I think the aspect on individualization is really critical, right? I think every investor genuinely does bring something different to the table. And, kind of to your point around doing due diligence on investors, I know several EF teams who speak really warmly about you, or I guess now they're fully fledged companies. And they are great references about you to new cohorts. You've got a lot of really interesting stories, like people who address you.
But can I point out something on that?
Yeah, sorry?
Just jumping in there, just jump in there. Can't make omelets without breaking eggs. There will be people that say bad things about me. They'll be saying bad things about Cocoon. You've got to take it as because we've turned down lots of people. We've done, and nothing in the world. If you can't find anybody who will say anything negative about me, then you haven't actually talked to enough people. And I would say that about what you've got to understand though is that the nature of the beast is that there will people always, with any VC out there, there'll be somebody pissed off with them, and you just got to get an understanding of it. So it's lovely that people like what I do, and because that's the right fit. We found the right fit between us and the entrepreneurs. But you've also got to understand is that we every VC has different quirks. If we were all the same, it would be very boring, and there would be no way to differentiate.
For sure.
So it's just important to understand. That's why I say the founders have to figure out what's important to them and what's the key driver in terms of a relationship that they're going to get into. But it's nice that people say nice things about them. I'll pay them later.
I have one last question for you before we move to the next section of our podcast. What is the most impressive turnaround story you've seen from someone who is pitching to you, and how did they go about that? Someone you had kind of said no to in your mind that managed to change your mind, if anyone.
Oh God, it's happened a lot of times. Mainly because most times founders do not know how to pitch to investors. So I'm very open with my feedback. And I, sometimes I'm a little bit too blunt. But I remember there was one company that I turned down when I originally saw. It was actually an EF company called Chattermill. And when I had originally seen their pitch, I didn't even follow up with them. I was like, it was, I can't say what it was, but it wasn't particularly good. I was going to say what I was thinking. I was like, okay, I don't know if they see this or not. So, but I was then introduced to them actually by Matt Clifford. He was like, you should have a look at them again. They're really, really good. So I actually sat down with them, and it took me a quite a long time to even figure out what they were doing. I think a lot of the time, because they had made a lot of assumptions in terms of what everybody else would know. So and again, this is sometimes a common issue with founders. They make a lot of assumptions that everybody knows all the acronyms and how an industry works.
Yeah.
And quite often, founders on the whole are generalists. Even though we do like deep tech, that can mean a variety of things. We look at our portfolio, it's across the whole. We're good at certain things, but we expect the founders to be experts in their fields. Mm-hmm. And also because they were looking at it so much in the solution, they failed miserably to talk about the problem. So it was really hard for us to for anybody to really understand the size and the importance of the problem that they were actually solving. So I actually met them and I had this long discussion. I kind of walked away and I was like, okay, I was excited about the deal, but I wasn't, so I was like, okay, let me get them to talk to my brother. And he talked to him. This is a UK company. So this is many years ago. And he met them and he had the same problem. But what was really impressive is that, so even though our mindset was kind of maybe towards the negative, they followed up with us and they had obviously listened to a lot of the stuff that we had said, and they were able to answer a lot of the questions that we put forward to them. So for me, it was something that, and they were obviously both amazingly smart. So it was kind of one of those things where I changed my mind. So my kind of, no at the beginning came to a maybe, then turned into a yes. And I've had companies that have come to me and I don't do the whole come back to me you're too early, come back to me in 6 months. I hate VCs that do that, because that really is telling you no. If they believe in you that much, they would say yes, because they'll be frightened somebody else would. They just don't want to tell you no, and they're frightened that just in case you do what you say you're going to do, if you tell them no, then you won't go back to them. So I normally say, look, it's no. Maybe if you can always come to me in 6 months, years time, if that changes that much. But right now, don't kind of think that I'm going to invest. I think it's much easier to be clearer. But I can probably say within Cocoon itself, where we've got a portfolio of 17 companies now, 3 of them, when we originally met, we said no. Okay. When
Just
we first, and they figured out a way of changing our mind. And it can be multiple different ways of doing it, but it's normally the following up, answering the questions. And it's not normally about the traction. It comes down to how they react and how they hustle us, and one of them, it was after 2 months, they changed their mind. I remember one, which we did, the first one I can remember, it was actually after a year. I told him specifically there was not a chance in hell he was ever going to be able to do what he was telling me he was going to do. A year later, he called me up and said, I've done it. And I was like, okay, how much is it going to cost me for me getting it wrong? So I had to pay a little bit more. But he achieved it. So there's, sometimes you have to figure out when is a hard no, when is a soft no, and when it is. But again, it comes down to relationships. If you get to know the right investors over a period of time, and I think that's one of the things that, you're doing here with this podcast, is people get to see me, that either like me or they don't like me. And hey, you can always find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to me. I know I'm not allowed to do this, but hey, I'm a salesperson. During the process, I'm always happy to have a coffee with people. Even though I don't drink coffee, I'll buy you a coffee and do it that way. But it's just getting to know founders. Then it makes it easier for you to invest, and makes it easier for me to invest in you if I've actually got to know you and track you over a period of time.
Well, Michael, there's 30 people who are very excited to meet you. These are 30 of some of the outliers that we've invited to join our 8th cohort here in Singapore. So I want to thank you for spending time with me, and then I'm going to open up to 30 more people who are very excited to meet you, and I'm sure you'll be flooded with coffee invites thereafter.
All right, fantastic.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode and are interested in founding your own company, apply via joinef.com. We'll help you find a co-founder, develop an idea, and launch your company from scratch. And most of all, we'll invest in you from day one. Applications are now open for our cohorts in Singapore, Bangalore, London, Paris, Berlin, and Toronto. To listen to more episodes of Spy Maps, visit joinef.com. Thanks for listening.